The Santa Fe Trail was the first used for staging purposes and was also the first to be reddened with blood and witness the hardships of prairie travel. From the earliest attempts, accidents were frequent, and suffering from exposure to the elements was common. The terrible summer storms sweeping the level plains or driving desert sand in clouds would delay the weary travelers for days in the utmost discomfort. Occasionally, the 8 frisky mules would prove too much for their driver, and there would be a runaway and a broken coach to be repaired with whatever tools might be at hand. In wet weather, for mile after mile, the passengers might be compelled to plod beside the wheels, laboriously prying them out of the clinging mud and burdening the air with profanity. However, the most serious disasters usually occurred during the winter in the mountain district that is traversed before reaching Santa Fe. Being caught there by a raging snowstorm was undoubtedly a terrible experience. With the trail blotted entirely from sight, all that could be done was wait for the storm to blow over. Passengers and employees had to crowd into the coach and use every effort to keep from freezing. And in the end, they often found themselves minus mules with which to complete the journey. Yet, even more, a summer hailstorm was to be dreaded, for nowhere else do such ice chunks descend from the sky. Invariably, such a storm meant a stampede of the mules, nor would a man dare to desert his shelter to seek them. A massacre by Apache. The first notable tragedy on the Santa Fe Trail, connected to stagecoaching, occurred almost with the first effort to establish the line. It was a westbound Concorde containing a full complement of passengers, including Mr. White, his wife, child, and a colored nurse. The journey was not an unpleasant one across the vast expanse of plains. The rate and range had been safely surmounted, and just about dawn one morning, the heavy coach entered the canyon of the Canadian River, its occupants unsuspicious of any danger. Instantly, they were fiercely attacked by an ambushed party of Apache under White Wolf. With scarcely any opportunity for defense, the unfortunate whites were shot down, scalped, and their mutilated bodies left on the ground. Mrs. White, her child, and the nurse were borne away prisoners. At Taos, New Mexico, were several troops of the 2nd Dragoons under Major Greer. The story of this outrage did not reach them for nearly 2 weeks. But upon its receipt, the Major at once started on a hard winter campaign in the hope of rescuing the captives. The soldiers had with them as guides several famous frontiersmen, Kit Carson, Uncle Dick Wooten, Joaquin LaRue, and Tom Tobin. The heavy snow made trailing almost impossible, yet the scouts discovered signs and amid much suffering, followed the Indian Trail for nearly 400 miles and finally located the village. Everything was ready for a charge when Major Greer suddenly decided to talk with the Indians before commencing to fight. This decision greatly enraged the eager troopers and gave the Indians ample time to prepare for action. They took full advantage of the opportunity and poured in the first volley, Greer being struck in the breast, his life saved by a suspender buckle. This occurrence took all desire for further peace talk from him, and the fight was on. The troopers charged twice, killing and wounding more than 100 Indians, but the chief escaped, and when the soldiers finally captured the village, they found there the body of Mrs. White, yet warm, with 3 arrows in her breast. No trace of either the child or the colored nurse was ever found. White Wolf was killed later by Lieutenant David Bell, 2nd Dragoons, in a most dramatic manner, and almost on the exact spot where the murders had been perpetrated. While on a scout with his troop from Fort Union, New Mexico, Bell came upon White Wolf and an equal number of Apache. As the conversation ensued, the controversy grew so heated that suddenly, the 2 leaders exchanged shots, the chief sinking on one knee to aim, and Bell throwing his body forward and causing his horse to rear. Describes what followed. Both lines by command fired, following the example of their superiors. The troopers, however, spurring forward over their enemies. The warriors, or nearly all of them, threw themselves on the ground, and the horse and rider received several vertical wounds. The dragoons turned short about and again charged through and over their enemies, the fire being continuous. As they turned for a third charge, the surviving Indians were seen escaping to a deep ravine, which, although only 100 or 200 paces off, had not previously been noticed. A number of the savages thus escaped, the troopers having to pull up at the brink but sending a volley after the descending fugitives. In less than 15 minutes, 21 of the 46 actors in this strange combat were slain or disabled. Bell was not hit, but 4 or 5 of his men were killed or wounded. He had shot White Wolf several times.